Good evening. Happy official autumn to everyone. Boy, it's all fell, didn't it? It just really came upon us. I'm Barb Jennes. I'm honored to be Ridgefield's Poet Laureate, and these readings are a part of my effort to get more Ridgefielders and other listeners and viewers to read, write, and enjoy more poetry. I need to thank so much the Keeler Tavern Museum and History Center for welcoming us into this garden, which is just everyone is just awestruck when they first see it, and every time you come here it's different and just as beautiful. I particularly want to thank Hildy Grove, Marianne Connors, Katie Burton, and caretaker Roger Keller for all the help they've given with this program. The museum has wonderful programs. It's so vital to our community. There is information about membership and also projects and programs on the back table, so please help yourself. We also want to thank Ridgefield Library, whose generous support helps to make this and many poetry events possible here in Ridgefield. Please be sure to jot your name down. There's a sign-up sheet back there. If you jot your name and email address, you'll receive notification of all upcoming poetry events in town, plus other fun poetry events in neighboring communities too. And also please follow Ridgefield Poet Laureate on Facebook if you're a Facebook user. I post all the events coming up there as well as these videos, so you'll be able to access tonight's program if you go to Ridgefield Poet Laureate. If you are able to join us next Tuesday, I hope you will. We have Connecticut Poet Laureate Margaret Gibson joining us. It's the last in our themed poetry readings in the gardens this summer, although we will continue more readings in fall and winter. She's going to be reading from her new collection, The Glass Orb. It's a collection that blends poems of personal bereavement over the loss of her husband to Alzheimer's with elegies for the earth during the ongoing global crisis wrought by climate change. Margaret will be joined by David K. Leff, Poet Laureate of Canton, Connecticut, in a program of poems calling for environmental defense. This evening's event is co-sponsored by Ridgefield CT Pride, the mission of which is to celebrate our vibrant LGBTQ+ community here in Ridgefield, to educate, promote awareness, understanding, and acceptance of this vital community, and to provide support for LGBTQ+ individuals and their allies. So if you would, please welcome Elisa Trachtenberg to tell you more about Ridgefield CT Pride.
Hi, thank you so much. So, anyway, so we started a few years ago, and Ridgefield CT Pride is a nonprofit, and we're part of the Friends of Ridgefield organization as well. And I want to say we not only do we do Pride in the Park, which is the main thing that we're known for, but we also run monthly support groups. And we have two different support groups. One is for adults, and the adult group is for people who have children or family members who are in the LGBTQ community. The second group is a youth group, and it's for anyone, youth who identify as LGBTQ+. And we also have, so it kind of is like a teen group, slightly younger depending, and also we have a couple kids who are in college as well, who are part of it, and each group meets once a month. And since it's virtual, anybody can join. So we have people from Texas who join us sometimes, and all different kinds of places. So everybody's welcome. Thank you. And thank you so much, Sorry. Thank you, Barb, for inviting us.
Oh, my pleasure.
So it's so sweet of you.
There we go. Thank you. There's a sign-up sheet for information from Ridgefield Pride too at the back table. So, and also a flyer about next year's Pride in the Park program. So help yourself. Thank you. And let's see. Oh, okay. So now for this evening's poets. For those of you who weren't aware, we conducted a Pride poetry contest that had two categories, one for teens and one for adults. And we received entries from all over the region, not just the Ridgefield community, but as far away as Massachusetts and all throughout Connecticut. And our first poet this evening was the winner of the teen contest. It's a delight to introduce her. Sonya Wells is an 8th grader at Harbor Middle School in Burlington, Connecticut. This was her first time submitting her writing to any contest. Sonya is interested in writing, singing, maybe she'll do some of that too, drawing and other art, theater, and, most importantly, drumroll, cat petting. Sonya's advice to young LGBTQ+ students is to trust yourself and be who you want to be. So please, welcome Sonya Wells.
Sorry?
Can you just read it?
Yeah, just read it.
Right. There will always be someone in a cage. Take, for instance, this bird. She is but a bird, and labels are her cage. The cage is worn and broken from birds that have made it out before them. It would be so easy to fly out. Let the sun touch her back and head, feel the wind ruffle their feathers. But it's never that easy. No matter how far her wings carry them, the voice never leaves. It calls them back, saying it's safer in the cage, saying the cage is where she belongs. The only way for these voices to disappear is if we all break the cage, leaving the rusted bars behind. Feel free to fly our own ways. So, who am I? I am the bird, and labels are my cage. So please, help me break my cage. Let me feel the sun on my back and head, and the wind ruffle my feathers.
Yay! You're too short.
That was great, thank you. Sonya, if you don't mind, I'm going to post that on the Ridgefield Poet Laureate Facebook page, if that's okay, so people can read it. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Oh, good. I think people would really enjoy spending some time with that. Really, really nice. Okay, and then, also, Tracy and family, thank you for traveling quite a ways for Sonya to join us this evening. We really appreciate it. Yeah. Our next poet, Ava Trachtenberg, is a transgender 15-year-old who loves helping others and trying to make the world a better place. She has been an active advocate for equal rights since age 5. By sharing her personal story, Ava has helped to educate and to foster awareness and understanding in the general public with mental health workers, educators, medical personnel, and government officials via articles, gender trainings, and conversations. Most notably, Ava spoke against the proposed discriminatory changes to the health care and health insurance laws. Ava was elected Ms. President U.S. for Ridgefield on the LGBTQ platform. She also helped organize Ridgefield's Pride in the Park celebrations and Congregation Shir Shalom's annual Pride Shabbat. Please welcome Ava to read her poem, Much More Than That.
I just want to start off by saying that Sonya, you did a great job. Some just see me as trans, but I am much more than that. I am Jewish, a bat mitzvah. I love blowing the shofar. I have a passion for art, painting, drawing, and jewelry making. I like dancing in the rain and not having a care in the world. I love helping others, volunteering with young kids and the elderly. I am a daughter, a friend, a grandchild. I am a cousin and a niece. I am funny, kind, hopeful and creative, stylish and a true fashionista. I am an advocate for those who don't have a voice. Some just see me as trans, but I am much more than that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know, Philip and Benjamin, you're going to have some competition in a couple of years. All right. Now, thank you, Ava, very, very much. Very good. Nice share. Our adult winner was unable to join us this evening, but she asked if I would share her poem with you. Kateland Kelly has been practicing physician's assistant for the past 11 years and is a lifelong writer, artist, and activist who owns the communication brand, The Right Assistant. She's a regular contributor to The Mighty, and her writing has been featured on Romper, MSN, and Hearst Media. Her work focuses on elevating the underdog and recognizing the grace in those who, quote, have gone through hell and returned to tell the tale. She gives special attention to stories regarding chronic illness and trauma. So please allow me to read, and I hope I do it justice, Kate's poem, My Queerdo Manifesto. We are the weirdos, mister. We are the ones who go bump in the night, never quite knowing the light like you. A prism held prisoner by syllables of silence. We are the weirdos, miss. We are the ones who hide in spaces in between, never quite knowing how to seem, a fraction out of phase as we play out our charades. Because passing is my superpower, man, but boy, is it hard to keep these scripts straight. So today, I finally flipped my script that's been keeping me a certain way, and I clearly call out to state, this is my Queerdo Manifesto. This is a declaration of divinity, an inexplicable entrance onto the world stage by which I've been frightened off for no good reason, because I've never had the language to describe what beats on the inside. And without a monologue to lob, we are stricken into silence. This is the Queerdo Manifesto, because to reclaim a phrase is to reclaim an identity and to cherish the challenge of both. To be a queerdo is to acknowledge the strange that is sentience, to appreciate that which is dismissed, to bring light to the darkness. To be a queerdo is to hold a spark of the prism within the prison of black and white and gray and gone. To stand tall, even when faltering as the facades fall away, one by glorious one, until there is nothing left but my sparkling ember burning brightly. So congratulations to our adult poetry winner. I wish she could have been here this evening. She had to work. So, okay. And now to introduce our first featured poet of the evening. The Poet Laureate of West Hartford, Benjamin Grossberg, is Director of Creative Writing at the University of Hartford. His most recent collection, which is, by the way, available on the back table, My Husband Would, published by the University of Tampa Press last year, investigates love and family, both the families we are born into and those we create for ourselves. The collection was a finalist for the Sheila Margaret Mountain Book Prize from New England Poetry Club, and it won the silver medal in the Forward Review's Indies Book of the Year Awards. My Husband Would is also currently in contention for the Connecticut Book Award. Benjamin's other books include 2014's Space Traveler and Sweet Core Orchard, winner of the 2008 Tampa Review Prize and a Lambda Literary Award. His poems have widely appeared, including in the Pushcart Prize and the Best American Poetry Anthologies, Poetry Daily, and Verse Daily, and the magazine's Paris Review, Kenyon Review, Ploughshares, Southern Review, and The Sun. So please, if you would, welcome Benjamin Grossberg.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thanks so much to Barb and to Ridgefield Pride for this event and for having Philippe and I out for it. It's a pleasure to be here to read for you all. It's a pleasure to read with Philippe. So thank you so much for coming. I'm going to read some poems from my new book, which I started writing not long after 2015. It's funny now, it seems so old hat, but of course it's only been 5.5 years since gay marriage was legalized in the country. So My Husband Would, among other things, is sort of grappling with that. If marriage is legal, then it's something I got to think about. So the first poem I'm going to read is not, however, about marriage. This is a poem about the Club Pulse shooting. Do y'all remember this? There's so many shootings these days, they sort of fade quickly, but when that one occurred, I really wanted to write about it. And the challenge about writing about something like that is that I wasn't there. In a way, it's not mine to write about. So this poem is my attempt to find a way into a tragedy which I wasn't sure I had a claim to, if that makes sense. This poem is called Heaven. And then it has a little tagline under the title, "The Houston nightclub, long shut down, where I once spent Friday nights. Heaven. Someone shoots up heaven, both bars and the small dance floor in the back. But the patrons, all just my memories now, ethereal wisps of smoke and soul, don't notice or care. The bullets spray through them where they cluster at the back bar, blurring their bodies as they flirt and throw back cocktails that turn to vapor in their mouths. Heaven's dance floor is a sway of boys. It's still the early 90s here, so pastel disco lights flash to strike it up and 100% pure love. Patrons dance as only memories can, pressing so close they pass through each other at the lips. When bullets glide through them, their bodies mingle at the entrance wounds. Fridays, cover charge is a canned donation, a canned good, a donation for the local soup kitchen, and booze, a pour of smoke in a plastic cup, costs only 50 cents till 11. On a night like this, sultry, with boys lined up to enter, a can of Kroger peas or hominy in hand, the click, click, click of an empty magazine, his laugh is lost to disco. He throws down the gun, its cold solidity, and charges the crowd. But the boys turn to mist, still laughing at their own jokes, and settle once he's passed. Spent, he collapses unnoticed against and through one of heaven's walls and tumbles right out of it. At the bar, one of the boys drifts toward another a few stools down, the swirl of him blown back by the movement. All night, he's been watching a guy, Michael, who he will continue to love long after they've parted ways. He's just found the courage to go up and say hello. So, like many poets, I love to write about the natural world, the beauty of it, the strangeness of it, and this poem is about that. It's based on an encounter I had in the reservoir in West Hartford. So I don't know if any of y'all have been there. It's beautiful. Maybe not quite as beautiful as this garden, but it's a lovely space. This poem is called In My 47th Year. Me, walking downcast. Him, dangling, ankle level, above a forest path with no branches overhead. I glance up to the canopy, a good 30 feet up. 30 feet. No overhang closer. Let's pause for scale. The caterpillar, half-inch long, and his silk just a glint when wind sends it swinging, as if someone has, with an X-Acto knife, cut a vector in the air. And above him, a gulf of nothing. What human has scaled such height, has been such a fantastically attenuated pendulum? So I stop to watch the shudder inside him. Is he consuming it, or balling the tether between rows of legs, scanning it? Whatever he's doing, he's clearly, and at a remarkable rate, rising. The curl and lengthening of his body steadying him higher and higher, so that, as I watch, he floats from my ankles to my knees to my waist, and in short order, we are eye to eye. It's then I think of fear. At my ankles, it was nothing, the fall. Even now, to me, not much. But soon he will rise higher, to a height from which I'd be terrified to suspend, to swing up above the heads of couples strolling hand in hand, with only that filament and the wind sway, its ocean-sized capsize. Impossible. So I look up again to gauge the height and see, because I'm awake to them now, I'm looking now, a dozen other caterpillars also rising, maybe end of day rising back to the trees. For sleep? But how to get the line up there unless they've kept tethered all day as they explored the earth beneath them, like humans walking the ocean floor, an umbilicus waiting to reel them up. Yet this is height, not depth, height. So like humans dangling from skyscrapers. Or no, not skyscrapers, because no structures stand nearby, no solidity at all. So like humans ascending to clouds, a dozen humans inching up on their own power to the undersides of clouds. And when I look back down to find my caterpillar, I start because he's gone, but soon see that he's not gone. He's just above me now, 4 feet over my head, testing and tensing and ingesting his silk. On this day, when I've done nothing, when a walk has seemed accomplishment enough because I've lacked the will to do more, he's above me now, ingesting, tensing. I've let my life drift to a place with no horizon, without vertical wonder.
Nice.
So that's sort of a downer poem, so I thought I would get the downers out of the way early. One more. This poem is called An Apology. And I wrote it after a date. This was a few years ago, before PrEP sort of came on the scene in a big way. I'm sure y'all know what this is. It's an HIV prevention drug, a remarkable thing to gay men of my generation, really a kind of miracle. But this was before that, and the revelation for me in this poem was that even though I had lived, I had come through the AIDS crisis without getting sick, I was still traumatized by it. And that sort of realization that even without getting sick, my life had still been shaped, had still been marked by something in ways that were, not salutary. An apology for Joe. I know you've heard this before. In the waiting room, I'd imagined red X's over some of us, slashes across our torsos, visible only to a large right eye peering through the roof. First, there was waiting. Then there was more waiting, and that was before we had to wait 2 weeks. It wasn't the thought of getting infected, not just that, but how the self would become a plate held at a careless angle, its contents slowly sliding off, with a dog circling. And then once, I drove home from a man's house in tears, but nothing bad had happened to me. He told me on his couch, our feet entangled. A gentleman, he'd said it before the first article of clothing hit the floor. Amazing that it went further. Me more wick than fuse, even then. Amazing that the salt crusted from a day walking the Galveston seawall, how his skin held onto it, is something I can still taste. It made me pull back sharply. What is that? Before coming close. And last week, you told me over the phone. In response, I teased out your story, avoiding the implicit question about us. Yes, I know how you took it, my demeanor, such news anchorly interest. It turns out something bad did happen to me, didn't it? And it was only later I realized that your words, even your tone, sounded practiced. Or, no, not practiced. Like something you'd actually said many times before. So this poem also has a lot of formal poems. A book has a lot of formal poems in it, excuse me. I went through a year where I could write nothing but sonnets, which, I don't know, that's You gotta see a doctor about something like that. So I'm gonna read some of them. The first one is called The Dogs of Sochi, which was written in response to a news article I read. Joel, remember, this was a long time back, the Olympic Games in Sochi, Russia. In order to prepare for this, the Russian authorities killed all of the dogs in the town. They rounded them up and killed them because they didn't want the town to look unkempt somehow. So I was thinking about that and read a news article which actually made the point about a dog who went free. I don't know how the reporter saw this, but apparently the reporter did. And the idea of getting through seemed important to me. So this poem is about a dog who gets through, and it's also about getting through traumatic periods in our own lives. The Dogs of Sochi, in preparation for the 2014 Winter Games. Shot with poisoned darts, tossed in trucks. Can you imagine that? The questing snout snapping back toward the stung flank, the flux of rising pavement, two-legged blur, a shout before you're hefted by front legs, thrown on a pile of your kind, the cold, sour tang of death encircling, theirs and your own, and then, perhaps, nothing. But one sprang free. The news said, one. Small, red, prick-eared, the dart dropped off. She shook, bolted the mound of bodies, leapt out, hit the street, heard them scrambling after, and shot from the sound. Just one. You taste the air rushing on her tongue, the push of blood and breath, a running song.
Nice.
In terms of people, things coming through, this sonnet also speaks to that. Grandmother at the stove. She strikes a diamond on the box. It flares, and when it nears the jet, a burst of blue engulfs her hand. Seems to, but unaware, she lets her hand linger, the match aglow within the jet, bright as a tiny star. Now she withdraws the hand, shaking, slow, unfazed, and holds the match aloft in air, then leans in close, face, lips pursed to blow. The nub flickering, her forefinger and thumb look like a wick, as if the fire had sprung from her breath, and she could carry it, numb and wielding. At her knee, I watch, too young to know she's come through 3 wars unburned, what it means to handle fire, how she learned. And one more sonnet, and I need to read this, of course, because it's about my cat, and if I don't read it, they'll be held to pay later. This poem is called The Next World. 3 years gone, the dog will greet me there. She'll waggle up to my arms at the pearly gate, a Spitz with wet glass eyes and fine white hair. She was nearly an angel in her earthly state, with just as much free will as angels have. Her nature to please mine, to show how grace can elevate obedience into love and turn a wolf's into an angel's face. But if things go south, at least it'll be my cat. Soot fur with eyes that flash like yellow tin. She'll help the devils rend my flesh, a blur of arch and hiss, of claw, ears back and flat. She shows the gross indifference of sin, then implicates me with a little purr. The title of this book is called My Husband Would, and there is no poem about my husband, but the title, I don't have one. If I did, right, it wouldn't be much of a title. But the title picks up a project from this poem, which is called My Daughter Would. I don't have one of those either, but in a different incarnation, in a different lifetime, I would have loved to. My daughter would eat McDonald's, hate cats, and refuse to pretend otherwise, even with my cat, whom she'd call Butt Stain, and flick off the couch with her thumb and forefinger. Be named after Viola from Twelfth Night because I was delighted by Bonham Carter in the Trevor Nunn film. Her friends would call her Lola because she'd have somehow discovered the Kinks. Would she know I hate that song? My first boyfriend said, "Don't bury me," when I observed we'd never grow old together because of his HIV status. She'd have dug his wassily chairs, black leather strips over chrome, which looked like torture devices or sex apparatus. He insisted they were comfortable. She'd have plopped herself down in one and stretched her arms along the armrest, asking, "Where are you taking me for dinner?" It would only have seemed like they were ganging up on me. I'd have brought her books, a bicycle, skirts the color of forest moss in rain to match our eyes, a watch pendant, 1920s reproduction decorated with seed pearls. She'd have wiped wrenches with the crenellated skirts, rolled her eyes and never worn the watch, but kept it with the diamond studs in the locked drawer of her desk until she sold both to buy an old Prius to visit Tijuana after graduation. I'd know because I'd have kept a key to the drawer, which I still wouldn't have told her about even now, though she'd be a parent and doing similar things. He once told me, my first boyfriend, that the only loss he felt when he was diagnosed was that he couldn't have kids. He and I spoke that intimately in bed, which I'm not sure people do anymore. That's the thing you'll miss? I thought, incredulous. He curled his head on my shoulder, and I said I hoped he'd miss nothing. Viola, lower that shit music and shut your goddamn door. My own parents use expletives compulsively. They're from New Jersey, and did so throughout my childhood. One Seder, my brother printed a picture of a woman fondling a gray stallion and brought it to the table where it rested on his Haggadah until it caught my father's eye. My mother was serving gefilte fish, a tan popped loaf in translucent mucus. With current drugs, even if he and the mother were both positive, he could. The baby would be protected. These days, when I bring Viola home for Passover, it's disappointingly sedate. But I'm unnerved anyway when she pokes the gefilte fish with her finger, then puts the finger to her mouth, and then eases the slice of the cold loaf on her plate. Since my brother and mother are eating it too, I can say nothing. Through the magic of Facebook, I know he, at least, has found a husband. They recently redid their kitchen in sleek checkerboard marble. "Shut your own goddamn door, Dad," she screams from upstairs. "And it's Lola, okay? Lola!" Their stainless fridge has no drawings taped to it, just like mine. Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Thank you, Ben. That was wonderful. I've heard the cat one before, and I like it just as much now. So, well, let's see here. Okay. Philip F. Clark is the author of the poetry collection The Carnival of Affection, published by Sibling Rivalry Press in 2017. He is currently the poetry editor of ANU, Art and Understanding magazine, Since 2015, Philippe has taught at City College in New York, where he received his MFA in creative writing in 2016. This year, he was a featured poet for the Phosphorescence Poetry Series sponsored by the Emily Dickinson Museum, and it was a wonderful reading. And this past August, Philippe conducted a poetry workshop for the Hudson Valley Writers Center. His poetry and writing has also been published in Tiferet Journal, the Marshlock Press, Tampa Review, Lambda Literary, and Vox Populi. Did I say that correctly? Close enough? I've read it a million times and never said it out loud, among many other publications. A native New Yorker, he currently lives in Queens, and so please, if you would, welcome Philippe F. Clark.
I don't have a husband either. It is an absolute pleasure to be with you here in this gorgeous setting. If I do get married, this is where I want the wedding, okay? Absolutely. And Barbara, your friendship and welcome, the pleasure to read with Ben, whose work I have loved, and to actually be here together. Ava and Sonya, to have you here reading your poems, absolutely beautiful, and I'm so happy about that. Pride for us gets extended here, obviously. This is September, and these beautiful colors are up celebrating Pride. I'm so happy for that. But I was thinking about the idea of, you know, what is pride? What are those words that we express to celebrate that? And I thought, there are a few quotes by Oscar Wilde that would probably do very, very well. First, Oscar Wilde said, "To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance." Love yourself. He also said, if you don't love someone for their looks, you don't love someone for their looks or their clothes or their fancy car, but because they sing a song only you can hear. And his last, and for me most wonderful, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. So yes, my book is called The Carnival of Affection. Affection comes to us in many ways. In pride, certainly. In happiness, in affection that's good, but sometimes in affection that's not so good. And is it a carnival? Of course it's a carnival. Like any good circus, you could look at any ring and see this going on, or that light there, and the elephants doing this, and the trapeze artist doing that. It's a carnival of affection. Affection being a part of this first poem. This is called The Acrobat. I don't need the circus of sex, the ringmaster's whip, or the roaring lions of desire. I don't need the trapeze artist's catch of breath, with no guarantee that the air will hold him. I look away from the horses and the beautiful women striding them, supine on their racing lovers. I am not stunned by the elephants or the disconsolate clowns who, for all intents and purposes, have left their hearts at home. I want a poorer show of affection, something that always takes chances on my vulnerable human skin, where touch is not a pantomime, nor an orchestra of missing instruments. I want to feel what it is like to know the art of bargaining with the net, that in falling, 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 I fall content, caught in the ticket taker's arms. For those of you who might remember something called Craigslist, it was great for a while. They had an area called Missed Connections, where you met someone but you didn't connect, and yet you're trying to get in touch with them. You know, the one person you saw somewhere in New York City that you know if you just put your missed connections ad up, you will find that person, they will remember you. However, It's called Misconnections for a Reason. You were on the L train. You were reading 50 Shades of Grey. I was reading 100 Years of Solitude. You never looked up until just as I moved off, always looking back your way and hoping you would lift your head. Then you did, at the last moment, but someone shouted, "Move it!" And I rushed off the train. I looked back to see your quizzical face looking at me. There was no chance for a smile. At home, I wrote an ad on Craigslist Misconnections, describing you, and I ended it with the usual, "If you see this and remember me, get in touch." But I decided also to read the book you were reading. But it missed all the real accoutrements of S&M, the way that people really master and slave each other, the way you don't need strange black leather clothes and toys, whips, paddles, and St. Andrew's crosses, the way instead that one person obeys and the other commands, the daily rites of loving someone you overpower, who overpowers you. And as I read, I missed some things. Beautiful women rising to heaven, young men being taken to see ice for the first time. The next poem I'll read, dear friends of mine got married and they wanted me to write a wedding poem for them. And I thought, you know, dearly loved my ex-Paul and his new husband. And I thought, what can I write? Does it expresses something other than what, you know, a wedding poem is? And I thought about the things that judge a marriage as well as prove a marriage and strengthen a marriage. And it's not always the times that are good. It's those times in between, the interstice between being strong and being weak in questions. This is called, "This is How You Make the Bed." It has been a long day. You put away the arguments and the mail. He will be cold and wet with rain. The dues have been paid. There is something to eat if he is hungry. You turn off all the lights but one. He may read a while. You close the curtains, leaving a sliver of window open. He will want some air. There is water for drinking or wine. The last thing you said, you forget. You hear him shuffle his keys. He disrobes. Shoes, socks, shirt, belt, pants. He smells of hard work. You hear the nude whisper of everything else. You lie still. He edges towards possible touch. He stops, though, at the sound of your breathing. You listen to nothing but air. His back to you, like a folly, you spoon. I'll read some poems from Carnival of Affection, and one of the most wonderful experience of affection that I had was my first trip alone to Dublin, Ireland. Dublin, the people there in Dublin, if you ask for directions, like in New York, they'll say, well, you know, go down there. In Dublin, they grab your hand, oh, lad, come on, and they, you know, go one half a block away, and they say, there it is, right there, stand right there, and you'll get the next bus. The Dubliners really do, you know, I love them, and it's not only because I'm half Irish and half Czech. They really, truly are wonderful, wonderful people. So and in Dublin, of course, you learn very quickly if you go to the local taverns. Well, you learn very quickly how to drink. If you had not drink, you know, if you were not a drinker before, you became a very happy drinker in Dublin. And so one evening, in you know one of the local gay bars there, the George, it was packed and crowded, and I was all alone, and decided, well, I'm gonna get into the thick of it. And so there's this wonderful music playing and these beautiful brogues I'm hearing, and a man settles up next to me. This is called Louis Belfast. I met him in a Dublin bar, his bright white hair shining like some last call light. I pushed among the crowd and stood behind him, my eyes trying to catch the bartender's tattooed glance. As luck would have it, I got a seat next to him once its previous owner stumbled to the door. With a sidelong glance, we nodded. I tried to order a drink. He asked, "American?" "New Yorker, yes." He held out his hand, "Louis Belfast." And I thought at first it was his full name. He turned ice blue eyes to the bar. "A Guinness, Declan, when you have a chance." When it came, he placed it in front of me. They're slow here this time of night. Cheers. He was maybe in his 70s, a strong, broad chest, well-dressed, smooth face. A blackened thumb tapped a beat to Crowded House, drumming in the room. He leaned into me. In a clipped and beautiful brogue, he said, "They say we have the gift of gab, so be prepared. I probably won't shut up." He traveled, taught, had a former wife. In a former life, his lover died. I'm monkish now. All I love to do is read. And for the rest of the night, Guinness after Guinness, I learned the art of the round. We spoke of Joyce and James, Dickinson, Manly Hopkins, Bowen. I didn't remember getting outside the bar. "Will you come back to us here in Dublin? You must take my number down," he said. He hailed me a cab. His strong arms settled me in, and he leaned into the window for a kiss. "Get home safe, lad. You know, there really is a death of the heart." Louis Belfast strolled away. I will return to Dublin. I will search for Louis. And this is a poem on a chance meeting in the street. Affection, as I said, comes anywhere. And affection is also encumbered sometimes by our inability to be affectionate or take affection from someone. And it comes in the strangest ways. This is called The Beggar's Welcome. He stopped and asked if I could spare some change. I thought, oh yes, I could. I could spare so much. Another job, a new home, other clothes, better weather, more chances, less pain. Yes, I could spare some change. He held out his hand, calloused, sooted, cracked. I groped for my wallet and I held his eyes, still young if half alive, as if they and his body were not the same. There were the chances he mistook, the changes on a dime, the house, the car, the wife or lover, the constantly put off grave. All I had was a clean last 20. Without a thought, I handed it to him. As he gently took it, his hand in mine, I knew. It's all we ever want, the holding. The asking is never as hard as the needing, the accepting never as hard as the taking. Just have two more poems. This is Joe, a story about a man who's, well, you'll soon see what his problem with affection is. He wore his fire, half beauty, half beast, his face the deal breaker every night in the bar, no matter how charming they found him. He grew used to the averted eyes for years. He settled into unsettling everyone. He was the wallpaper and the fly, drinking up and taking everything in with his one good eye, the other a dare of blue glass. There were things before the fire. Before is a whole space now, a book he can read, a fire. He thinks of what it felt like. Now he knows how to quiet fires, to listen for licks of flame. A kind of living moves him now. He remembers skin before it was something else. The body burns quickly, that vagrant stare of mouths. He knew the sound of eyes on skin. Books never failed him. The warmth of ink and the light inside his head, one could still cry, and did. But a book is not a hand or a chest on which to lie. He loved the sound and feel of pages, the handle books, that skin. Someone looks at him, says hello with an outstretched smile. The want of words was his problem now. His mouth with its empty cavern voices softly dimmed. A cab together, and then bed. He had never undressed with a man's eyes on him. He stood, faltered, and turned his eye away. The man reached to him and touched Joe's skin. Shaking, burning, all night, the man became a book. And I will end with a poem called Grief Leaves the Room. It leaves on a Saturday, suddenly, when you are taking out the leaves or taking out the trash, those inevitable boring things. You do not hear it go. It's been quiet before when it left certain rooms. It no longer sleeps beside you, and you learned long ago that the bed was seldom warm. Yet the least of it was never about a missing body. You've made the bed nonetheless. Eventually you do not return its calls. And really, what letter might you write? How is the weather there? Do you have the company of others? Its hand unclasped from yours. There was no urgency in its exit. Perhaps it was just a visitor all along, there when you needed it, with news of the outside world. Your body has lost its ghost, a gentle amputation. There was no pain. In its place came the mundane art of acceptance, and you're able to respond to emails, listen to the opera, deal with late rent. It never had a name, though you tried so many on for size. Nothing fit when you tried to wear it, and you could not return the thing. You are well dressed now, naked in your best. Tomorrow is Sunday, the day of rest. Thank you very much.
We are so lucky to not only have this community, but this garden and these poets to share their evening with us. So thank you, Benjamin and Philip. That was just, and Sonya and Ava. It was a wonderful